Anyway, take it away, Andreas.
Thank you. My name is Andreas. I'm sure everybody here knows me. Most of you use one or more of my products already. I'd like to start by saying, no matter what I say here today, I really do love Podio. I have hitched my wagon to Podio for, what, 11, 12 years ago. And I really do hope that there's a lot of success for Podio, because it'll also make life easier for both Tape and myself, because when you say to people, what is InfoLobby? And you go, well, do you know Podio? And they go, yeah, it's like that, but better. But right now, it's like, do you know Podio? And people go, what? So I really do hope Podio does very well. The reason that I started on InfoLobby is actually Tape's fault, because I wasn't going to do this. I was in a long non-compete with Citrix after selling Globiflow to Citrix. And I figured I was getting old and don't have the time, effort, energy. You know, this is a lot of work. But then when I was talking to the Tape guys, I was thinking, no, but I would do that differently. And I just couldn't help myself. So InfoLobby was born. Officially, about a year ago, it went live. And I'm going to make this rather quick. Oh, wait a minute. Rather quick, so I'm going to go over the differences and some highlights, because we all know what Podio is and we all know what these platforms are. And then I'm going to go into a Q&A to fill up the rest of it, because I only have like 7 slides, so this could be really, really quick. Our philosophy is we had to get this in stone right in the beginning. The slide is a little bit inaccurate because speed is actually our top #1, what we aim for. And internally, actually, we have a phrase we use. It is everything has to be fast as fuck. That is the official game plan. There are times where I have fights with my front-end developer because he puts in intentional slowdowns because apparently it's too jarring if your interface changes too quickly. But everything we do is based on speed. I'm an old SAP guy, so InfoLobby is not flashy like some of the other products out there. That is not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a database platform that is super stable, super fast, 100% accurate, and super reliable. Reliability is then the second thing that we aim for. Obviously, it has the same weight as speed, but you know, speed is what we go for. So everything is heavily tested. We have less limits than, like, there's no 500,000 item limit like Podio has. We don't have in the workflows limits on how many things you can collect. Like, we just want this to be like SAP, but smaller. And we have complete table separation. So any table in InfoLobby is actually physically a table on disk in the database. So when you build your tables, you can actually think of it like you're working in something like MySQL Workbench, and you're creating a real table. We just do some of the heavy lifting for you, but on disk, it's an actual table. Flexibility, because, hey, we can do a lot. One thing that's built in, which got added on in the Podio ecosystem with ProcFu, where you can add other integrations like OAuth and stuff like that, that's baked into InfoLobby. You can connect any OAuth 2 service, any HTTP service, connect it as an integration, and then you can call it in your automations as you want. So like if you want to use ChatGPT, it's like super easy. Connectedness kind of goes on that because, like I said, you got OAuth 2, HTTP authentication, SMTP authentication, and if there's something that we missed and you want, just put in a support ticket. Coming to the highlights and differences, the first thing is, Andrew actually brought this up yesterday, we've got tabs. So instead of having all your fields on one screen, you can just move them into tabs and then have a tabbed interface so that it just becomes a little bit easier to work with. And subtables, I believe, my personal opinion, one of the big issues with Podio calculations being overworked is because they get used to show subtables of information. So for example, you have an invoice and then you have your line items. They are too far apart in the Podio world to be really usable, so people create these calculation fields to show the line items of the invoice on the invoice screen, which kind of makes sense. In InfoLobby, that is just part of the configuration. That's like super easy. You've got invoices and line items. The line items become a subtable in a tab on the invoice itself, where you can interact with them like you can on any other table display. So you can open them up, you can edit them, you can do the inline editing. You can create new line items which automatically are then linked to that said invoice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just like you would expect in a invoicing application. But because it's general, I just used invoice as an example. This could be projects and deliverables. It could be deliverables and tasks, whatever. We have wikis. This is new. It's still a little bit beta-ish. So if you see bugs, please put in support requests. We're still evening out some of the rough edges, but it is live. It's out there. Because not everything is a table. Sometimes you want to have documentation, readmes, knowledge bases, etc. And that becomes a very, call it a Notion-esque kind of way to display your information. It does retain things like comments and tasks, so people can comment on individual pages in the wiki. The wiki tree, content tree on the side will auto-flow as you add and remove pages. Adding new subpages is easy. You just use the @ to mention, put in the page name, and boom, it creates a new page for you. And you can embed live widgets in them if you want to use it for like dashboarding purposes. Any widget you can create on a table screen or what you call an app screen in Podio. Those widgets you can just embed inside any wiki document, and they live update as you. Please.
Are you able to share that with external members anyhow, or only?
Not easily at present. Actually, you might be able to. I would have to double check that. Because it's so new, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't tested that itself. I know you can with any table view. You can, under the settings, there's a sharing tab, and one of them is to make it public. So you can take a table or a view and just iframe it on your website, and it's all there.
And it updates?
It gets pulled directly, so there's no caching involved. Yeah.
Okay.
We have full email integration. Basically, I mean, for those of you who use GlobeMail, it's like having GlobeMail built right in. So after you connect your SMTP server, from any comment sidebar, you can send an email to anybody listed on the record, or just type in an email address, and replies are auto-captured again here. Difference to GlobeMail is we don't route the email. So when you connect your SMTP server, it gets sent from your SMTP server. So there's like 2% of email replies that we cannot capture, because usually it's like older versions of Microsoft Mail or Apple Mail that do not respect the reply to protocol, and they reply to the from address itself. So you would receive the reply in your email client, but if you just click the hamburger menu, you get the email address for that record, forward it to that record, and it's back in here. Oh, and you can email from flows, obviously, just like you can in GlobeFlow. Permissions, actually very different than Podio. We have an admin-only flag, both at the table and the field level. So when you have your space members, you kind of give your space members the role of being their admin members, their read and write members, their read and comment, or their read only. That determines what they can do in that workspace on all tables in that workspace. But then you can go at the table level and say, this particular table, only admins can either create, update, or delete. And at the field level, you can also do that. And that's very useful in cases where, let's say you have, I can't think of an example. You just don't want anybody to be able to delete a record except admins, because usually people can delete records. We can say, no, in this case, I don't want people to be able to delete records, so you just set the admin flag. We have the lock to user option, where you can lock an entire table to a user field if you have a user field in the table. And then there's two variations of that. That's read, and then there's write. So on the read example, we use that for the support ticket table in InfoLobby itself. So when you create a support ticket, it is actually a table in InfoLobby. There's no special help desk software or anything like that. It is a normal table, but because we've set the user field to be at the read level, that means you guys that are logged in can only see your tickets. And you can create new tickets, and they'll always be yours. Whereas the tech team, when they log in, they can see all the tickets. And if you do it at the update level, the good example for that would be like a vacations kind of table where everybody can log their vacations in there, can see everybody's vacations, but you can only update your own vacations. You can't update anybody else's vacations. And then we have free partner access, which I think Podio has got now for a while. But if you have your clients, they can just add you to a workspace as an admin. And there's no having to do anything special. There's no billing ramification. If you've got the partner flag set, they can just add you and you can help them and they can kick you out later.
Andreas, is that domain-based or user-based with regards to the partner flag?
User-based.
User-based. Okay, so we need to let you know for new users in the team.
Well, I know who a partner is. You have to apply for the partner program. So I know you're a partner, so I set the partner flag.
But if Joe Bloggs starts with me next week?
Working with you?
Yeah,
you would have to let me know.
Cool.
Calculation fields. What everybody's been waiting for. Do they work? Fuck yeah.
That's a step up.
Can we create?
I have so many opinions right now. Maybe I should just keep quiet. Next slide.
No, come on.
Okay, so opinions aside, the way that I decided to approach this to try and solve the infamous calculation problem is to completely remove any kind of asynchronous job processing caching. There is zero caching involved. So we've got two kinds of calculation fields. One is a simple SQL calc that can do simple things like concatenating strings, can add some numbers together, do a little bit of math. You can go and get the max value or the count of records or the minimum of values, etc. Sum of values. But basically the simple kind of Excel kind of stuff. They are always correct. They're never cached. It's simple SQL. And you can query and filter on them because they become part of the SQL query that gets run when you ask for your records. On the other side, we've got asynchronous script fields. They're asynchronous. They use PHP, a slightly dummified version of PHP. You cannot query on them. You cannot filter on them. They do not get returned on a table because they do not exist. And that's because they get Ajaxed in later. So when you pull up a record from a table, you see all the record details, and then another request comes off, runs the script, gets the evaluation of it, and pops it into the UI. So if you've got a script that goes off and does a whole bunch of work on a whole bunch of tables outside, does some API calls and comes back and it takes 5-10 seconds, it'll take 5-10 seconds for that to come in. But that's the only time these things get calculated because as far as the whole system is concerned, they don't exist. It's just a script field. It gets Ajaxed in, boom. They do work for ProcFoo if you're doing mini apps. Those fields, if you select them, they get Ajaxed in there as well after the fact. They're incredibly powerful. And like Spider-Man was told, with great power comes great responsibility. They have access to everything. So these script fields are basically the same as variable blocks are in flows. There are additional commands you can use to go through your data and grab whatever you want, whatever you need. And you can return full HTML, you can return CSS, you can return JavaScript if you want. Like if you want to hack into your own system, you can do that. The HTML and the CSS can be useful because sometimes you don't actually want a value from the script field. But let's say that there are certain conditions on a record which are absolutely horrible in your business world. And you could just return a simple piece of CSS that changes the whole screen to red and throws in a pop-up error. Like you can use it for that kind of a use case. It doesn't have to be calculate something.
You can calculate an error to be presented. Yeah.
Absolutely. AI. We have AI.
Next slide.
Next slide. Actually, that little dude was generated by AI. We have AI in calculation fields. And I think that actually automatically pops up when you drag a calculation field option to your table builder. It asks you, hey, do you want some help? Just let me know what you want the thing to do. And it'll try its best to give you the formula. We have it for script fields, where it'll generate the PHP for you, including traversing related tables and all that kind of stuff, and building HTML if you need. And for flow variables, which are almost identical to script fields. To create new table fields, you can say, instead of dragging 3 or 4 fields, you can just say, I want these extra fields. And you can use it to build entire apps. So, if you want invoices and line items, it will create 2 tables for you with a relationship and all that stuff. All there. We have importers from multiple systems, including Excel, Notion, Podio, and PWA. The Podio import is like 95%. Calculation fields obviously don't come along because of the differences in the systems, so that would need a bit of work. The PWA imports are, I'd say, about 80 to 85% because of the differences in systems. It does require human intervention, but it is a hell of a lot faster than trying to migrate manually. Our flows are slightly different. We don't have collection limits because we don't need to collect anything. Like back when I was building GlobyFlow, the one big issue was that Podio was this system over there, and GlobyFlow was this system on my machine. So it needed a lot of API calls to get the data, to be able to massage the data, to do things with the data, to then go back to Podio. Because this is all basically in the same tin, none of that has to happen. So if you want to do a for each over related records, you just do for each related, and it doesn't matter if there's 10, if there's 1,000,000, it does not matter. Same with like a search loop. You search for something, if there's 1,000,000 results, it'll go over 1,000,000. Our vars, they don't break. You don't have to base 64 encode anything. They are not limited to text. You can have arrays in vars, and they'll store them quite happily. Special characters, not a problem. We have UI action steps. So sometimes if you have a flow running and it's doing a business process, maybe you want to alert the user that is executing the flow and ask them a question, say, do you really want to do this? Or you need extra information, please input blah. I need this to do the next step of the flow, and then you can continue the flow thereafter. Coming back to API integrations, you want to call ChatGPT, you want to call Xero, you want to call QuickBooks. It's all built right in. You don't have to worry about OAuth 2 tokens and refreshing and all that stuff. And the logs, the run logs are stored per run instead of per run action like in GlobyFlow, which makes it a lot easier to debug stuff because you will have, for every time the flow runs, there's only one entry, and when you open it up, then you see the individual steps for that one. Because often if you have multiple runs that kind of happen near the same time, it's very difficult to determine which entry was for which run on which record. Integrations. Seem to be talking a lot on integrations. SMTP for email, HTTP basic auth, like if you want to call procfoo stuff, you just add procfoo as an integration and you can call it. HTTP token authentication, hey, you want to do ChatGPT, put in the token, add it as an integration, call it from any flow. OAuth 2, same kind of thing. And of course, works with procfoo portals, super fast, much faster than Podio because it's basically SQL access. And hey, that took longer than I thought.